And joining me now to talk more about today's poll results is Quinnipiac University pollster Mickey Carroll. Nice to see you, as always.
Liz, it's good to be here again on lovely, snowy Albany.
Well, it's not snowing at the moment, but just stick
Wait,
around.
Lamar.
Stick around a little while. Okay, so what's interesting is that what we have like to call here at Capitol tonight the charm offensive by the governor seems to be working, at least where it comes to New Yorkers. They like this approach, the soft touch approach, if you will.
Well, we asked a specific question along those lines. Let me read you the question.
Right, please do.
Should Governor Cuomo steamroll his opponents to get what he wants, or should he try to persuade them as they share a meal? You know, that's that business about having the legislature over for the mansion, for a little schmoozing.
Right.
68 to 19. They like that rather than the steamroller of Eliot Spitzer.
What's funny is because the disapproval of the legislature is 65-20. So
that's always true.
Right, but it's not like they feel somehow connected to this idea that state lawmakers are always pushing, which is we are a duly elected body and you, Governor, should deal with us in a respectful way.
But that's a fact, you know, whatever people do.
Sure.
Look, Liz, every poll, not only Quinnipiac, every poll shows Congress, legislature and stuff, now they're lousy. But once again, usually your assembly member or your senator or your Congress member, yeah, you sort of like them. So that's sort of standard. I mean, it goes back to George Washington and God knows what of people say, no, we don't like them, those politicians. But they do like the idea of a governor who tries to get along.
Right.
Quite clearly.
But he's also, I mean, he's really walking a little bit of a fine line here because, yes, it's true that he is saying to them, work with me, I want to work with you, regain the reputation of the legislature, which has really been scarred by the scandals, etc. But he's also publicly chiding them. He is, he never shies away from saying that the legislature needs to stand up and do what he thinks is right, not what they think is right, per se.
Well, that's fair enough. But also, Liz, and I guess this goes back to my years as a political reporter, it is important that people get along. It is important that if you read in the old days, and I mean like a century or so ago, that Republicans and Democrats, particularly in Washington more than here, yeah, they'd yell at each other in the session.
In the old days, they had duels. Okay, they shot at each other.
And a guy got caned in the Senate.
I mean, it wasn't like it was so genteel in the old days.
No, but they did tend to get along. They tended, Liz, history. There was a really good book on Henry Clay.
Right.
And there's in which Clay gives a speech in which he needles John Calhoun. And but
this is the history lesson portion of this interview.
Yes, but the point is you could just see the two of them afterwards saying, okay, boy, you really got me on that one, let's have a beer.
Right.
There was that kind of thing. And Liz, that's the way it ought to be. In other words, if you have genuine philosophical differences, and Republicans and Democrats do, but when I covered stuff up here, and that wasn't that long ago, it wasn't certainly the Henry Clay era, they tended to get along.
Right.
It's just healthier.
Well, but the thing is, though, if you look at the numbers, at first New Yorkers really dug that whole steamroller thing that Eliot Spitzer did.
Yes, they did, but then it cooled pretty quickly. The numbers said, yeah, boy, go get him, Governor, but then it began to look as if maybe going to get him isn't such a good idea, and the numbers went down.
You
Look,
guys
Liz,
poll in Jersey. You poll in Jersey. They like Chris Christie's sort of plain-spoken, tough-talking attitude.
People do like a plain-spoken, tough-talking guy, sure, but that doesn't mean that he has to be nasty about it. You know, it's funny, Liz. When I taught journalism, a lot of journalism schools tell their kids, you got to be aggressive, you got to be tough. That doesn't mean you have to be rude.
That's true.
And unfortunately, too many people think that aggressive or tough or you name it means rude or ill-mannered.
Yes, I'm still learning that lesson on occasion. The governor's numbers also, you took a first look at his job approval rating. This is not to be
56-15, pretty good.
Not to be confused with likability or favorability.
No, there's different ways of asking this thing. Siena had a good poll a week or so ago.
77%.
Yeah, did people like him? Well, there are numbers in here that indicate people like him. We asked, it was Christie's job performance gave me the idea. We asked, do you like him? Do you like what he's doing? Or do you like him but not like what he's doing? You know, one of those four-way things?
Right.
And it was something 41% people like both Cuomo and his ideological approach. Some 16% don't like his ideology, but they like him.
Right.
And that's sort of like the Siena numbers, that yes, he's a popular, well-liked guy. We don't agree with him.
But he's particularly supported, actually the highest support that he gets is among Republicans and upstaters, which is interesting because he's a Democrat from New York City originally. Now he's living in Mount Kisco.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the Republican-Democrat thing is almost equal, which is interesting in itself, but the upstate thing is incredibly 10 points better upstate than he is in the city.
Right. Well, the city trends liberal. I mean, let's just be honest.
Well, he's not
Democrat.
conservative.
No, but Democrat-dominated, and particularly what we saw at caucus weekend, just this past weekend, he was heckled by someone. No,
that was Barron.
Okay, but
Barron's a good act, but it's not to be taken seriously.
No, well, but however, I mean, I think the sentiment is shared, which is to say that Barron and other people who were in that room, elected officials of Latino and Black elected officials, don't think that the governor is doing enough to tax the rich, and they like that.
Well, they're probably right on that, Liz. But once again, that phrase that you always hear on budgets, don't balance the budget on the backs of the poor. The fact is, it's always going to be balanced on the backs of the poor, because the poor are much more than you or me. They're the clients of government. They're the welfare people. They're the people who depend on the government for aid.
Right. And
so
they have less discretionary income. So if you increase something like the sales
forget
tax
that.
or whatever.
The rich, poor, or whatever it is, well, I'm sorry, that's wrong. The poor people depend on the government. Most middle-class people, their kids go to public school.
No, they fund the government with their taxes.
But also their kids go to public school, and that's one reason why school aid is such a touchy issue, because that is the one thing that most middle-class people never get. Maybe somebody puts a fire out in their house or something, but basically, or arrests somebody who prowls in their backyard, but essentially schools.
Well, but this is where things get a little bit potentially sticky for the governor, although we should say, again, that we have not yet seen the kind of fights going on here that we've seen, say, in Wisconsin. Now Indiana and Ohio are having these battles over public employees. Not so much, it's not gotten here, although New Jersey, New Jersey, Chris Christie versus the public employees, particularly the teachers. But the voters opposed 76-22 cutting state aid to public schools, 64-32 opposed cutting Medicaid. That's the bulk of the budget right there.
Well, I think I said Willie Sutton. Why do you rob banks, Mr. Sutton? Because that's where the money is.
Right.
If you want to cut the budget, where the money is. But if you notice, when it comes to public employees, now those are not as big an area as school aid or Medicaid.
No, if you axed the entire public workforce tomorrow, which would require a shutdown of government, you still would only save less than $1 billion.
Is that what it is? Yeah, okay. But basically, people are willing to take a shot.
Sure.
At public employees, and as I tell you, the other half of this poll comes out tomorrow about the last in, first out. And
that's the hiring and firing of teachers. That's the policy.
Exactly, and the whole school business.
Sure.
And when you mentioned Christie and Cuomo are doing essentially the same kind of thing, but that's not Democrat or Republican so much, or even conservative or liberal. It's realist, because the fact is that each of them has a budget that is in trouble. The Quinnipiac poll.
Well, all the states have budgets that are in trouble. Really.
I know, and people will at least concede that. Then when they say, "Governor, you got a problem. What are you going to do about it?" Well, don't hurt my kids. Don't hurt my grandma.
Right. Just in closing on the state worker thing, in Wisconsin, it's really what's going on here is nowhere near. I mean, you don't have a governor who is attacking collective bargaining, which is really the bedrock of labor.
The Wisconsin thing. Again, we're way far away from Wisconsin. All I know is what I read in the papers. That seems a little extreme. There's a guy who seems to have a real agenda, and he's the governor. And
well, but there is a perception here. 58% of people support reducing pensions. 72% support a wage freeze.
Well, the governor supports a wage freeze.
Yes, the governor can propose that in his campaign promises.
Yeah.
But when it comes to layoffs, which is the outright loss of jobs, people are split, right?
Yeah,
46%.
and that's understandable. I mean, should everybody have to share? Yeah, but should some guy get fired? You can see the reasonable.
Yeah.
The reasonableness of that attitude. And the Quinnipiac numbers say people are reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, last in, first out.
And teachers and budgetary stuff in general.
Okay.
Labor stuff in general.
Okay.
And my guess is that the New York numbers, I haven't seen the numbers yet. They run them through the computer. But my guess is that the numbers that Quinnipiac has gotten in New Jersey will not be an awful lot different than the numbers that
Very
turn up in New
interesting.
York.
Well, that's only one river that separates the two.
Very interesting.
Well, that's only one river that separates the two.
You betcha.
I want to thank you very much, Mickey Carroll, for coming in. We'll be catching up with you soon.
Thank you kindly, Liz.